this session, we are going to discuss asymptotic notation. This is one of the most important and promising discussion of the series. If you understand or follow this discussion well, you will feel comfort in analyzing the algorithms. You will not get confused during the analysis of the algorithms, whatever with the algorithm. Before starting the discussion, let us spend few minutes on what we have discussed in the previous sessions. We have discussed that an algorithm is the set of instructions for solving the given problem. And these instructions will ultimately get fed to a system through any programming language. So we convert the algorithm instructions to programming language instructions, nothing but system instructions, and ultimately get fed to the system. And to execute these instructions, algorithm consumes system resources like memory and CPU. And for any algorithm, we give the input. For the given input, what is the output? Our solution is nothing but the algorithm. So algorithm is a set of instructions for solving a given problem. We give some input and it tries to give the solution or output for that. Here the fundamental question that may arise here is, for a given problem, we have the solution or algorithm. Why do we need to analyze them? We have the problem and solution. Why do we need to analyze them? For example, let us assume we have problem P and we have some solution S. For a given problem, we have solution. Why do we need to analyze? Let us say we want to go from city A to city B. So there could be a number of ways, right? We can go by flight, we can go by bus, we can go by train, we can go by car. There are a number of ways. Problem is same, going from city A to city B, going from one place to other place. There are a number of solutions. You might argue that the problem is going from city A to city B. So going by flight may be the best choice, right? Now let us assume we want to go to a village where there is no road facility. In that case, we have to go by walk. So in algorithms or computer science, best may not be best always, and worst may not be worst always. In this situation, going by walk, that is the best case, best possible solution for that problem. So given the situation means, if we have limited memory, what is the best solution? If we have limited CPU time, what is the best solution? So we have to analyze all the algorithms, and given the situation, we need to select what is the best one for that problem. That is why we need to analyze the algorithms. For a given problem, if you have multiple solutions for the same problem, we need to analyze both of them and select the best one given the situation, like CPU or memory, limited CPU or limited memory. That is why we need to analyze the algorithms. But okay, for a given problem, if you have multiple solutions, we have to analyze them. But how do we analyze them? For that, we already understood that we use the concept of rate of growth. What we understood here is, for a given problem, if you have multiple solutions, to analyze these solutions, we cannot use the execution time. For example, if we run it on Pentium machine, the execution times may be different. If we run it on mainframes, the execution times may be different. That's why we cannot use the execution times for comparing the solutions. Similarly, we cannot use programming language or lines of code, because if you code it in C language, the number of lines might be different. If you code it in Python for the same solution or algorithm, the number of lines will be different. So number of lines and programming language or the execution times is not the correct way of comparing the algorithms. So that is why we have discussed in terms of rate of growth. So for any algorithm or solution, it should be in terms of input. So when we are discussing or analyzing the algorithms, they should be in terms of the input. For example, if we say merge sort, we all say the merge sort complexity is n log n, or binary search complexity is log n. Here, what is n? We all know that is the number of elements in the given array to get sorted. So whenever we are discussing the algorithms or solutions for any problem, we should discuss in terms of input, which is independent of all the execution times, programming language, and also lines of code. That is why for any analysis of algorithm, we have to represent in terms of the rate of growth. For example, for a given algorithm, we have a set of instructions. First instruction may be taking some time, second instruction may be taking some execution time, third instruction may be taking some time. Let us say it has some for loop which takes n. This might be having some constant. This might be having n square, 2 for loops inside, nested for loop. So to analyze any algorithm, we represent the every algorithm in terms of function. For a given function f of n, running time of the algorithm is nothing but running time of each component of the algorithm. So nothing but n plus 1 plus n square plus something. So to analyze any algorithm, the algorithm instructions we usually represent in terms of functions. If you are discussing in terms of CPU time, each component is the CPU time. If you are discussing in terms of CPU or space, each component is the memory, how much memory each statement is consuming. So the overall running time of the algorithm, the analysis of the algorithm usually represent in terms of function. Each component is nothing but a running time of each instruction in the algorithm. Clear? So, and when we have some function something like this, let us say this is for f1, solution 1. Similarly, for solution 2, we have another function. If we have different solutions for the same problem, we are representing them in the functions. And for each of the functions, we can compare them. Which one is better, which one is. For a given input value, n is equal to 100. How much time the first solution is taking, how much time the second solution is taking. In terms of rate of growth, but we are not discussing the exact unit of CPU time. We are not discussing in terms of execution times. We are just discussing in terms of rate of growth, how the algorithm is increasing in terms of time and CPU or space. What I mean to say is, if we keep on increasing the input value, at what rate the algorithm time is increasing? At what rate the space is increasing? The algorithm space. How much space it is consuming for solving the problem. If n is equal to 100, at what rate the algorithm is taking for solving this problem. If at n is equal to 1000, what is the rate of growth of the algorithm? That is what we have to understand, and that is the focus of rate of growth. So for a given function or given problem, if you have multiple solutions, each of them will be representing in the functions. And we analyze these functions in terms of rate of growth, which is nothing but input parameter. So in terms of input, when we are saying measures out n log n, if you keep on increasing the input size, how the algorithm is behaving, we are defining in terms of n log n. Similarly, for this function, we can say n square, which is the biggest one. For this one, something else. So for a given function, how much time the algorithm is taking for solving this problem? That is nothing but at what rate the algorithm is taking for solving this problem, that is we call it as rate of growth. Clear? Now let us focus on the other. Okay, actually for a given problem, if you have multiple solutions, we analyze them and we analyze in terms of rate of growth. But how do we analyze them? How do we exactly say that, okay, this is better in this case, that is better in this case? How do we say? If you have two solutions, solution 1 might be performing better in some cases, solution 2 might be performing better in other cases. How do we analyze that? Okay, which case is better for which solution? Right? So here, for a given algorithm, we give the input, right? Among all possible inputs, we find some set of inputs for which the algorithm behavior is good. We call it as best case. Other set of inputs for which the algorithm behavior is not good. We call it as worst case. And other set of inputs for which the algorithm behavior is average. We call it as average case. So for any algorithm or solution, we divide the inputs into 3 different subsets. One subset for which the algorithm behavior is good. That means algorithm consume less memory and CPU. The other subset, algorithm consume more memory and CPU, worst case. And other cases, the algorithm consume average memory and CPU. We call it as best case, worst case and average case. So whatever the solution or algorithm, we usually discuss in terms of 3 cases, best case, worst case and average case. Best case means, what is the input for which the algorithm takes less time? What is the input for which the algorithm takes more time? What is the input for which the algorithm takes average time? Okay? Now, let us keep this aside. For a given code, how do we say that this is the best case? Or how do we say that this is the worst case and average case? How do we find that? Let us consider this simple function. For a given function f, here the input is n. Carefully observe. Some statements here. In the else part, let us add a nested for loop. So instead of 10 or n, you don't have to worry what this function is doing. Our objective is to analyze best case, worst case, and average case. For this simple function, you can see that if n is less than or equal to less than 100, we are going to the if part. If it is greater than or equal to 100, we are going to the else part. And it can, we have already discussed that guidelines of our asymptotic analysis. Those who have not watched that video, please take a look at that so that you will understand how do we calculate the running time of the given algorithms. So from that discussion, we can say that since we have a simple for loop which is executing for, let us add n here, which is executing for n times. So we can say the running time of this one is n. Similarly, since we have nested for loop here which is executing n times, and this is also executing n times, so overall running time is n square. Now for this solution or algorithm, how do we analyze the best case, worst case, and average case? Here you can see that if n is less than 100, since the running time of the if part is less when compared with the else part, we can say this is taking less time, or we can say this is the best case for the given algorithm. So the best case of this one can be defined as so let us assume this declaration going to take some constant amount of time, and this condition is going to take some constant amount of time. And if this condition is true, we are going to the if part. So since we are discussing the best case, and since n is less than n square, we are assuming this is the best case. So based on that, since this is a constant amount of time, this is constant amount of time, and the running time of the if part is n. So the overall running time of this one is, in the case of best case, we are getting 1 plus 1 plus 2n. That is nothing but 2 plus n. As I said, like for any algorithm or solution, we represent the running times in terms of function, that is nothing but input. In terms of input, f of n is equal to 2 plus n. Similarly, for worst case, f of n is equal to, whether it is worst case or best case, we have to declare the variables. So let us say that is constant amount of time. And similarly, in both the cases, we have to execute this condition, whether it is best case or worst case, whether it is true or false. So let us say that is 1. And since we have already seen that this is the order of n square, so n square. So the overall function is 2 plus n square. In this case, for this algorithm, we have got the best case as 2 plus n, worst case as 2 plus n square. But how do we discuss the average case? Since we don't know actually, right? If n is less than 100, we are executing the part. If n is greater than or equal to 100, we are going to the else part. How do we analyze the average case? There is no direct equation where we can say this is the average case, right? How do we find the average case? To understand that, since we don't know the actual input for which the average algorithm is giving the average case, what we do is, we tend to perform all such possibilities. For example, n is equal to 1, we are going to execute this one. For n is equal to 2, we are going to execute if part. For till n is equal to 100, we are going to execute if part. So let us say we are performing n such operations. Total we are performing n such operations. So first out of them, first 100 are, we are going for if part. And remaining n minus 100, we are going to the else part. So to analyze the average case, what we do is, f of n is equal to, for first 100 instructions or for first 100 inputs, we are going to the if part. So the nut is nothing but 100 into, for first 100, 1 plus 1 plus approximately 100. Sorry, n here. First, for first 100, whatever the expression that you are getting for the best case, same thing. Plus, remaining all n minus 100 into 2 plus n square. This is what we are getting for the else part. Since we are performing total such n operations, n minus 100 plus 100, this becomes a total number of operations are n. So to find out the average case, this is the expression that we are getting. For the best case, we are getting this one. For worst case, we are getting this one. How do you find the average case? So to find the average case, we have to perform the operation for n times and take the average. Since we are performing total of n operations, we are taking the average of the running time of the each operation. So first for 100 operations, we are getting this running time. Next on n minus 100 operations, we are getting this running time. We are summing them and divide with n value to get the average. So for any given algorithm, we have the best case, we have the worst case, we have the average case. Now what I mean to say is, for a given problem or algorithm, we have best case, worst case and average case. For each of the cases, we have some function. We are discussing the running time in terms of function. Now for a given problem, if you have multiple solutions, S1 will be having three functions, one for best case, worst case and average case. S2 will be having three functions, best case function, worst case function and average. And for each of the cases, in best case which solution is better, in worst case which solution is better, and in average case which solution is better. That is how we analyze the algorithms. And given the situation means, given the limited memory, we have to analyze the solutions based upon the best case, worst case and average case. If you have limited memory, which case is better for which solution? So that is how we analyze the algorithms, and that is nothing but the concept of types of analysis. For a given problem, we analyze the algorithm in terms of best case, worst case and average case. It's nothing but finding what is the input for which the algorithm running time is good or not. Before going to asymptotic notation, we still need to understand one more concept called asymptotic curve. What is asymptotic curve? Why we are calling this discussion as asymptotic notation or asymptotic analysis? So this gives the answer for that. What is asymptotic curve? You might have heard about asymptotic curves in your either 10th or 10 plus 2. Let us say the x-axis is n. For a given function f of n, say n square plus 2n plus 1, it can be anything. For a given function means, in our algorithm's point of view, it is nothing but algorithm instructions. Each component is the running time of the algorithm instruction. So for a given function, it can be either best case function or worst case function or average case function. We don't have to worry. Given a function, what is the asymptotic curve? Given a curve, function is nothing but a curve. So for example, in this case, y-axis is the function value. For n is equal to 1, we will get some value. For n is equal to 2, we will get some value. N is equal to 3, we will get some value. We keep going like that. So if we keep on increasing the input value, we get some curve, something like this. We don't have to worry whether we are getting the real curve or not. Our objective is to understand asymptotic curve. So as n tends to infinity, if we keep on increasing the input value, we will get the values for that one. So everything is nothing but some curve. So this is nothing but f of n for a given curve. For a given curve, how do you find the asymptotic curve? What does it mean is, now let us take another real-time example. Let us say you went to a shopping mall. In the shopping mall, let us say you are buying a car and a cycle. So you are in the shopping mall, you are buying both car and cycle. Car is for yours and cycle is for your child, let us say. And one of your best friend, sees you there and he is asking, what are you buying? Right? Since he is the best friend of yours, usually we don't say, you don't hide any information, right? Usually you say car or cycle. Since the cost of the cycle is very less compared to the cost of the car, observe here. Since the cost of the cycle is very less when compared with the cost of the car, we usually say we are buying car. Yeah? At the smaller values, we are approximating it to the bigger value. So for example, if you take this function, f of n power 4 plus 2n plus 1, let us say this one. So n power 4 is nothing but the cost of the car, this is nothing but cost of the cycle, and this is nothing but cost of the pen or pencil, something like that. So when we are having some function, Smaller values, whenever if we are asking what is the running time or what are you buying in our case, you are approximating the lower values to the upper values. Right? Similarly, here also in asymptotic curves, for a given function f of n, what is the approximated curve? So here for this expression, what are we saying? We are buying car is nothing but n power 4. We are approximating these two lower values to this one. Similarly, for this function, what is the approximated curve? It means if we keep on increasing the input value, both the curves, something like this, both the curves will be the difference between both the curves will be very less. If we keep on increasing as n tends to infinity, the difference between the f of n and asymptotic curve of f of n, let us say this is g of n. So as we keep increasing the input value n, the difference between the f of n and g of n, this we are calling it as asymptotic curve of g f of n. Are you getting my point? So if you keep on increasing the input value n, as n tends to infinity, if you keep on increasing the input value as n tends to infinity, the difference between both the curves is very small. And those two curves we call them as asymptotic to each other. G of n we can say asymptotic curve of the f of n. We can put it in the reverse way as well. So here idea is we are approximating the lower values to the upper values. Why we are doing that? Whenever if you are analyzing the algorithms, every time we cannot say best case is n square plus 2n plus 1, worst case is n power 4 plus 5n plus 1, something like that. We cannot say very long expressions every time. We have to simplify them so that it is easy to understand. For example, if we say merge sort, we are saying just n log n. But if you look at the algorithm, there are so many other steps as well. But we are simplifying them. So that is nothing but smaller values you are approximating it to the bigger value. So in mathematics, the concept, that means for given function, what is asymptotic curve? What is approximated curve? That means at larger values of n, what is the approximated curve for the given function? That we call it as asymptotic curve. So in analysis of algorithms, whatever be the function, whether it is best case, worst case or average case, we always tend to find the asymptotic curve. That is why this analysis we call it as asymptotic analysis. We will come to the notation, don't worry on that part. What is big O, what is omega and what is theta? That is a different story. But as of now, asymptotic analysis, why we are calling it? Because whatever is the function, we are approximating. We are trying to find the approximated curve for the given function. Now let us move on to this one. So you understood why we are calling it as asymptotic curve? Just because of the concept asymptotic curves. So at larger values of n, how the algorithms are behaving, that's what we need to analyze. So and at larger values of n, we are approximating the lower values to bigger values. That since we are trying to find the asymptotic curve of the given function, we are calling them as asymptotic analysis. Now what are these symbols? What is asymptotic notation? How it is related to asymptotic analysis? To understand that, as we all know, right, what is this operator? Plus, addition operation, subtraction, division. So when we are looking at some symbols, for example, if I am speaking in English, you all are understanding. If I speak in regional language, few set of people will understand. If I speak in national language, other set of people will understand. If I speak in different languages, so there are, rules that we are using for understanding, communication. Here also, when we are saying plus operator, it means something. When we are using minus, it means something. Similarly for division. For example, if you take plus, if you are indicating given two numbers, how do we add the numbers? Are we saying that first take the least significant digits, add them, if there is any carry, move to the next significant digit? Are we discussing like that whenever we see plus operator? No, right? It is intuitively giving some meaning for us. Right? Similarly for any other operator, you take any mathematics operator or anything. So every symbol has some meaning associated with that. So that by looking at that symbol, no need to discuss that, okay, this is for addition and we have to keep adding the least significant to most significant digits and all that. Right? Similarly, in analysis of algorithms also, we are using some symbols so that we can simplify the discussion of analysis. We can make the algorithm analysis easy. Right? So that is why we are calling them as asymptotic notation, and we are using three symbols for that: big O, omega, and theta. This we call it as big O, omega, and theta. There are other names for this one. So big O is also called upper bounding function. Omega is also called lower bounding function. And theta is also called order function. We'll come to each definition of each one, so that we'll get clarity in understanding these symbols. In algorithm analysis, this is the most common area of the confusion. Many people think that big O is the nothing but worst case, omega is nothing but the best case, and theta is nothing but the average case. That is wrong. They were totally different. The definitions were different. The meaning of the notation and the corresponding analysis are different. As of now, we have understood what is analysis. Different types of analysis: best case, worst case, and average case. Now we are trying to relate them to the big O, omega, and theta. So for a given function, as I said, like for a given algorithm, we have best case, worst case, best case, and average case. For each of the cases, worst case, best case, and average cases, remember, we can find big O, omega, and theta. We can find big O, omega, and theta. We can find big O, omega, and theta for each of the cases. Never confuse. Given an algorithm, we have worst case inputs, we have best case inputs, and average case inputs. For each of the cases, we have separate function. For f of n is equal to something. For each of the cases, we have some function. And for each of the function, we can find big O, omega, and theta. Irrespective of the function, whether it is best case function, worst case function, or average case function, we can find all the three. Okay? So there is no confusion. Analysis of algorithms is nothing but different types of analysis: worst case, best case, and average case. For each of the cases, we have some function, and for each of the function, we are going to find big O, omega, and theta. Clear? Now let us look at each of these symbols one by one. First one is big O. As I said, like we also call it as upper bounding function. So for a given function f of n, as I said, like for a given function, we can find all the three: big O, omega, and theta. For a given function, how do you find big O? We say for f of n is equal to big O of g of n. It is nothing but, given function can be something like 3n plus 2 or something, anything. And it can be n, that means asymptotic curve. It can be n log n or whatever, something like that. So we say f of n is equal to big O of g of n, such that we find some constant c and n0. We will come to that. What are those? F of n less than or equal to c into g of n for all n greater than or equal to n0. So these are positive constants. Positive constant means there should not be any negative values for c and n0. What does it mean? So how do you find, for a given function, how do you find the asymptotic curve, g of n? How do you find that? So by using this expression. So what does it mean? Let us say this is the curve. This is n, which tends to infinity. And this is nothing but f of n as well as g of n, rate of growth. For example, f of n is equal to 3n plus 6 or something. You can put any value. Let us say this is the given function. Now how we are trying to find g of n for this. So for n is equal to 1, 3 plus 6. So you will get something like this. N is equal to 6, you will get 15. Some curve, you don't have to worry again. So let us say this is the given curve, f of n. Now for a given function f of n, you are trying to find g of n. How do we find? If it satisfies this expression, we can say f of n, for f of n, g of n is the big O. So f of n is equal to big O of g of n. What does that mean? So it means for a given curve f of n, we are trying to find another curve. I said, like in the case of asymptotic curve, we are trying to find another asymptotic curve for g of f of n. So here also we are trying to find g of n for f of n. So let us say this is g of n. Here if you carefully observe, f of n is 3n plus 6, but g of n can be anything. So 3n plus 6. So what are we trying to do? Find c into something for all constants n greater than or equal to n0. We'll come to that. So which value if you put here, whether if you put n, can we satisfy some condition like this? If you put n square, can we satisfy some condition like this? It should satisfy for every value of n at larger values of n. At lower values of n, we don't have to worry whether g of n is bigger or f of n is bigger, because during the analysis of algorithms, at lower values of n, we never care. At larger values of n, at how the algorithm is behaving, that is what we need to understand. That is why at lower values of n, we never care. So this is, we call it as n0. This is, we call it as threshold. Below threshold value, either g of n can be bigger, f of n can be bigger. But after threshold value, for all n greater than or equal to n0, after this threshold value, c into g of n, it should be greater than f of n. That means if you keep on increasing the input value, once the threshold is reached, after that it should satisfy this condition for every value of n. So, if you put 1, does it satisfy the condition for any value of n? So, if n is equal to 100, this value is bigger, right? What are with the c value? So, once we fix the value of c and n0, we should not change them. For example, if I put 1000, and if n is equal to 3000 or 4000, if we keep on increasing the n value, this is not satisfied. So once we fix the constant c and the n, we should not change them. So for a given constant n or 1, what value if you put, this condition is satisfied for every value of n after some threshold. So for 1, we are not able to satisfy this expression. If you put n, can we satisfy this expression for what values of c and n0? If c is equal to 1, can we satisfy this one? 3n plus 6, definitely it is not less than or equal to 1n, right? At larger values of n. What are the threshold value? For all n greater than or equal to, we have to say some value here. So C1 is not satisfying, 2 is also not satisfied. Usually, to make the simplified actual version of finding the C values and n0, what I do is, if it is 3n, I usually go for 4n. If it is 10n, I usually go for next one, 11n. So since it is 3n, I will be going for 4. And now once we fix the value of C, it is easy to find the n0 value. So for example, n is equal to 1. We are getting 4 here, we are getting 9 here. N is equal to 2, we are getting 8. 6 plus 12. So usually for n is equal to what value, this is satisfied. After some threshold value, we have to satisfy for every value of n. So what is the n0 value for this one? If n is equal to 6, n is equal to 6, this is 18, 18 plus 6, 24, 24. Clear? Usually by looking at this one, we can identify what is the n0 value. Once we are, next one, if we are selecting that. Clear? So now you can put n is equal to 5 or 6 or 7, doesn't matter. Once it becomes actually 6, n greater than or equal to 6, this condition is satisfied for every value of n. You can take n is equal to 7, 10, 20, 100, 2000, that doesn't matter. For every value of n, it is satisfied. So because of this, f of n is equal to, we can say big O of, since we are using g of n is in terms of n, we can say big O of n. Now here's slight difference here. Some textbooks, they have extra word called tight upper bound. We'll come to that actually. So now we can say f of n is equal to big O of g of n, that is g of n in this case n. Can we say n square here? That means, so g of n can we write as n square? And for what values of n0 and c? If n is equal to 1, 4 and 9. If n is equal to 2, we are getting 4 into 4, 16. So for all greater than or equal to 2, we have satisfied this condition. So we can say f of n is equal to big O of n square as well. So what I mean to say is, once you are able to satisfy for n or n square or n power 3, beyond that, all the upper bounds, remaining upper bounds will be automatically get satisfied. That is one thing that you have to keep in mind. And some other textbooks, including our book, we have added an extra word, what we call it as tight upper bound. What does it mean is, for example, let us take the same example. 6, for what value of n, we will find this one, for all n greater than or equal to which one. This is what we have to find. In some textbooks, there is no word of tight upper bound. So if you are able to satisfy for n is equal to 6, with 6 value, 4 value, c is equal to 4. And for all n greater than or equal to 6, we are able to satisfy this condition. So we are able to satisfy for n. G of n is equal to n here. Once we are able to satisfy this one, some people says that f of n is equal to big O of n. And we can also say that n square, big O of n cube, and linearly going. Among possible, this is also upper bound for this function. This is also upper bound for this function. This is also upper bound for this function. Among all possible upper bounds for the given function which is satisfying this one, the lowest one, among these the lowest upper bound is n. We say that as a tight upper bound. We focus on the tight upper bounds, not the other. Because if you are able to satisfy for lower upper bounds, among the upper bounds, whichever is the lowest, what we call it as tight upper bound. If you are able to satisfy for tight upper bound, automatically the remaining are satisfied. That is why our focus is to find the lower tight upper bound, that is nothing but the lowest upper bound. So we always try to find the lowest order rate of growth. Clear? So in our book, actually we added this word, tight upper bound. Among the upper bounds, what is the lowest? We call it as tight upper bound and we call it as big O. Some books, textbooks, they say that without tight upper bound also, they also say that big O of n square, big O of n cube. That is also okay. But it's a different variation of analysis. There is nothing to worry so much on that. Don't be confused actually whenever you don't see the tight upper bound. But it does not matter. So among all the upper bounds, whatever is the lowest, we call it as tight upper bound. And we tend to find the tight upper bounds than bigger values. That is what the focus for us. Now, another important thing. Okay, for n is equal to 3n plus 6, for n is equal to greater than or equal to 6, we are able to satisfy this condition. For c is equal to 1, 4. For c is equal to 4, n0 is equal to 6. So beyond n0 is equal to 6, beyond this threshold, here 6 is the threshold. This is satisfied for any value of n. One important observation that we need to keep in mind is, the value of c and ng are not unique. There is no uniqueness of the values, constants. C can be anything, n0 can be anything. That means, while satisfying this expression, there could be infinite number of possible values for c and n0. So instead of, what I mean to say is indirectly, instead of 4, you can put 5 also. In that case, the n0 value will be little different. So while finding these constants, c and n0, you don't have to worry, these are very fixed, I cannot find c and n0 and all that. They are very infinite and there is no uniqueness of those constant values. You can give anything unless, as long as it is satisfying this expression. Yeah? So for a given function, we say big O of g of n, that is nothing but another curve. In this case, we are curve. So you might have observed actually, another small doubt you might be getting. So in this case, the given curve is this one, f of n is 3n plus 6. And g of n is n. You might be arguing, you might be thinking in your mind like, why g of n is less than 3n plus 6, how come g of n actually have drawn it above the f of n? Because of this constant. So we always have to use c into g of n. We should not use directly g of n. So while approximating lower values to the bigger value, we are multiplying with some constant. For example, n square plus 2n plus 1 f of n. While approximating all the smaller values to the bigger value, instead of directly saying n square, we say 2n square and remove this one. That is why we are multiplying c into g of n. And for the same reason, we are getting c into g of n above f of n. Now let us go on to the next asymptotic symbol, omega. They also call it as a lower bounding function. The discussion is pretty much similar to big O notation, that is nothing but upper bounding function. Similarly, here also for a given function f of n, as I said, like it can be either best case function, worst case function, or average case function. We say f of n is equal to omega of g of n. F of n is a curve. Here it is n value, which tends to infinity, and this is nothing but rate of growth. When do we say f of n is equal to g of n? Omega of g of n. The definition and analysis is pretty much similar to upper bounding function, such that we find some two constants nc and n0, which satisfies this condition. To simplify the discussion, let us consider the same function. F of n is equal to 3n plus, let us say 6, whatever we used in the previous example. So if n is equal to 1, we will be getting 9. 2 is 12. Some curve, same curve we will be getting. And this is f of n. We have to find some constant c which satisfies this expression for all greater than n0 values of n. So let us say after some threshold, this we call it as n0, we need to find another function g of n such that this condition is satisfied. It means we will be finding another function, and if we keep on increasing the n value, the difference between that one f of n and c into g of n is less. So we are trying to find another one, as in the similar to the previous discussion, this is f of n, and we are trying to, that means this is f of n, and we are trying to find c into g of n, as like multiplying c value constant. So we have to find some constant c into g of n for all n greater than or equal to n0. This is what we have to find. So what should be the n0 value? What should be the c value? So for example, can we put 1 here? So can we say 3n plus 6? So it should be greater than or equal to, sorry. Greater than or equal to c into g of n is 1 here. C into 1. For all n greater than or equal to 1. So say c, let us say we can put c in. Can we say 3n plus 6 greater than or equal to 1 into 1? That is nothing but 1. C value we are also putting it as 1. Can we say like this? True, right? So if you are able to satisfy this expression for any value of c and n0, we can say f of n is equal to omega of 1. Right? Now let us try another possibility. So instead of 1, let us put n here. So here we are putting n. Similarly here also let us say c value is still 1. Can we satisfy this expression for every value of n greater than or equal to 1? Right? For every value of n greater than or equal to 1, we are able to satisfy these conditions. Omega of n as well. Among all possible lower bounds, this is the lower bound actually. As I said, like this is the lower bounding function. Among all possible lower bounds, we tend to find the tight lower bound. Tight lower bound means we satisfied for 1. Similarly, we can even get it satisfied for log n as well. So we are getting it satisfied for n. Now let us try for n square. Can we find some constant c value for which this expression is satisfied at larger values of n? Whatever may be the n value after n0, it should be satisfied. Can we find such constants? Let us say c is equal to 1000 or c is equal to 1. Anything, you can put any value. Can we get it satisfied for at larger values of n? If you carefully observe, since it is in terms of n and this since it is in terms of order of n square, we cannot get that expression satisfied for larger values of n. So we cannot say omega of n square not. So for this one we are able to find omega of 1, omega of n, we can even get log n, but omega of n square we are not able to get. Among all lower bounds, these are all lower bounds. In the case of the upper bounding function, we found the upper bounding function. Once we are able to satisfy for n, we tried for n square, we tried for n power 3, we tried for n power 4, 2 power n, something like that. In this case, we have to try the lower bounds. If we are able to satisfy for 1, we have to check whether it is satisfied for n or not. We have to check whether it is satisfied for log n or not. So among all possible lower bounds compared to n, we have to select the tight lower bound. So for the omega, we use the word tight lower bound. So among these, tight lower bound means among the lower bounds, whichever is the biggest. Among these, the biggest one is omega of n. So usually consider omega of n instead of omega of 1 and omega of log n. Indirectly saying, if it is satisfied for omega of n, we can automatically say that it can satisfy for log n as well as for 1 as well. That is why our focus is finding the tight lower bound. Among the lower bounds, whatever is the biggest one. Tight lower bound. Among the lower bounds, biggest one. Similarly, in the case of omega also, there is no fixed constants for c and n0 for any given function. There is no uniqueness of finding c and n0. There could be infinite number of possible ways for finding the c and n0. Pretty much similar to upper bounding function big O. Now let us consider the last one, theta. We also call it as ordering function. Theta is the one which tries to give the exact running time of the algorithm. That's why we are calling it as ordering function. At what rate the algorithm is running. We'll try to understand with definitions and examples. As similar to big O and omega, we say for a given function f of n, as I said, like it can be the worst case function or best case function or average case function. We say theta of g of n. In big O and omega, we try to find two constants, c and n0. But here we try to find three constants, c1, c2 and n0. So for what? How do we define that? c1 into g of n less than or equal to f of n less than or equal to c2 into g of n. If you carefully observe, g of n is common. If it is n, c1 into n, c2 into n. That means the given function f of n, it should be varying in terms of n only, g of n. It should be between c1 into n, c2 into n. They should not move beyond that. So for a given function f of n, how do we draw it? I'm very bad at drawing, don't worry on that. Here also n tends to infinity. It is again the rate of growth. Here also we get some curve. This is f of n. In the case of theta, we try to find two curves actually, c1 into g of n, c2 into g of n. At lower values, we never care. and another curve. Carefully observe. G of n and G of n. Function should be same. Order of something, same. N or n square or whatever. But the constant C1 and C2 are varying. So any function which is satisfying this one, we can say f of n is equal to theta of G of n. For example, let us take the same example. F of n is equal to 3n plus 6. So 3n plus 6 less than or equal to C2 into something, C1 into something. For all n greater than or equal to n0. What value you have to put, we will come to that. So if you put 1 here, so G of n is equal to 1. Can we get this expression satisfied for every value of n at larger values? So this can be satisfied, but if you look at this one, it is not satisfied for at larger values of n. So if you put log n, that is also not satisfied because n is greater than log n. So usually what we do, we will follow the same expression. While finding the big O, what we have done, if it is 3n, we tend to find 4 actually. We tend to place 4 and here we put whatever is the largest. While finding omega, what we have done, whatever is the biggest, we will tend to put the same thing. And for C1, we can satisfy this value. Anything less than this, we can put 2 as well. So while finding the big O notation, if it is 3, we are putting 4. While finding omega notation, if it is 3, we are putting 2. So that we can find the values of C1 and C2 easily. This is one simpler way of finding C1 and C2. Once we fix the values of C1 and C2, now let us fix the value of n0. So for what values of n0, this expression is satisfied. If n is equal to 1, here we are getting 2, here we are getting 9, here we are getting 4. So at lower values of n, this expression is not satisfied if you carefully observe. Now let us make the increment for n. n is equal to 2. Here we are getting 4, here we are getting 12, here we are getting 8. This is also not satisfied. n is equal to 3, 6, 15, 12. n is equal to 4, 8, 18, 16. Here it becomes 10 next iteration. It will be 21. It will be 20. As we already seen a similar approach, 12, 24, 24. So for all n greater than or equal to 6, we are able to satisfy this expression for all values. So after 6, after n greater than or equal to 6, we are able to satisfy this condition for every value of n. So because of that, we can say f of n is equal to theta of g of n. Here g of n is nothing but n. If you carefully observe here, whatever is the input value n, the function f of n is varying between the c1 into g of n and c2 g of n. Here also, f of n is in between c2 into g of n and c1 into g of n. It will never go beyond the c1 into g of n and c2 g of n. So that is why, since it is giving the exact rate of growth for the given algorithm, we call it as ordering function. What is the order of function? So for any function, if it is possible to find big ordering function theta, we have to give focus for that. So any algorithm, for example, if you take merge sort or heap sort, sometimes we use theta, sometimes we use big O. So also remember that. Another important observation is, for any function, if big O and omega are same, theta will also be same. For example, in this function, we got big O of n, tight upper bound. We got omega of n, tight lower bound. That's why we got theta of n also. Right? If big O and omega are different, we might be getting the same theta or different theta values. Clear? So what we have to remember is theta is very much important to estimate the exact running time of the given function, given algorithm or solution. So what we have discussed as of now, we have discussed what is an algorithm, why do we need analysis, what are different types of analysis, why we have to use rate of growth, because we cannot use execution times and programming language or lines of code, and how they are related to asymptotic notation, asymptotic analysis, asymptotic curves we have discussed, how they are related to asymptotic notation, why do we need symbols, and as part of that we have discussed about ordering functions, upper bounding functions and lower bounding functions, big O, omega and theta. And as a final note, remember that for any function or algorithm, will be having best case, worst case and average case. For each of the cases is nothing but we have separate function, and for each of the function we will be finding all the three, big O, omega and theta. Never confuse between the types of analysis and the notation, asymptotic notation.